Take your mind into the wonderful world of physical, emotional, psychological, and spiritual wellness. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Kinetic Hour. Conversations with you and guests. With your host, Kenan Wesley Mason. That's me. All right, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, and welcome to another edition of the Kinetic Hour. I am your host, Kenan Wesley Mason. Welcome one, welcome all. Thank you all for tuning in as we are well into mid-January today, January 19th, 2024. Thank you one, thank you all for tuning in. As always, go to my YouTube channels. There's always two. One is the Kinetic Hour. The Kinetic Hour, and that is Kennetic. The Kinetic Hour. Go on YouTube, subscribe, click the like button, thumbs up, leave your comments. Tell everyone that you know to tune in to the Kinetic Hour. Also, tune into my other YouTube channel, which is Kinetic Fit and Wellness Info. Kinetic Fit and Wellness Info. And again, that's Kinetic, Kennetic, where there's tons of stuff about health and wellness, physical and mental health. And again, subscribe, click thumbs up. There's a bunch of videos, a variety of videos. Leave your comments. Tell everyone you know if they want health tips, physical health, mental health. And but let everyone that you know, especially for here, the Kinetic Hour, as I said, my voice will permeate whether someone watches this live. Again, I always say whether it's one person or 100 people, my voice will permeate at some point, as it is right now. There's a lot going on. Today is Friday, and there's been a lot going on throughout the week. And I just wanted to point some things out for the next hour or so. The first thing, as I usually talk about things on the political front, Black History is coming up in the next couple of weeks. Black History is coming up. But in the political field, it appears that political figures really don't want to talk about what America is and has been for 250 plus years. We hear Republicans and Democrats always give the same spiel of talking points saying that America is not a racist country. And we also see that there are certain political figures that, as I said last episode, that one political figure who's running for president right now, the former governor of South Carolina, one, and I want to make sure I get her name right, one Nimrata Randhawa, if I'm saying that right. If I'm not, my apologies to you, Miss Nimrata, aka Nikki Haley. Former governor of South Carolina and former U.S. ambassador to the United Nations, which, by the way, the senator of South Carolina, who she appointed or who she endorsed to be the senator of South Carolina, one Mr. Tim Scott, just today, if I'm not mistaken, endorsed the Donald. Hi. Tim Scott. Oh. Along with former presidential candidate who dropped out earlier this week as well, or last week. I think he suspended his campaign, Mr. Vivek Ramaswamy. And both of these candidates, come to find out, are from the same part of the world. They're both from India. They're both Indian immigrants, or they're both, their families are from India. And Nikki Haley, who chooses not to go by her birth name to run for president. Why? Only one can speculate. I can only speculate that she did not choose to use her full and birth name that her parents gave her, because it might lose weight with her fan base, because it's not American enough. So she chooses to call herself Nikki Haley, which is more Americanized, versus her birth name coming from Indian culture and her Indian parents that migrated here back in the 70s, and whose father was a professor. I don't know if he still is or not, but he was a professor at a university, a historic Black college or university, HBCU, Voorhees College or Voorhees University in South Carolina. I think he taught African American studies. I'm not sure. But we all know that he taught as a professor at an HBCU. And, she's the one that, couldn't tell the country why there was a such thing as a civil war, which may or may not have gotten her some votes, not wanting to talk about cultural things, not to stumble her fan base. But there's been some things going on that, she's said earlier in the week. I just want to play a clip of, because again, we're going into Black History Month, and it's real interesting how the persons in the Republican Party choose to, how they choose to speak on matters when it comes to African American history. And again, this is the same woman that didn't know why the Civil War took place, again, from 1861 to 1865. 1865. Here we're going to see why, and this is just a theory that one has brought up. One Joy Reid, as Nikki Haley was on Fox News talking to Brian Kilmeade of Fox and Friends. And I'm just going to play a clip. Actually, I'm going to play a couple of clips here. But I just want you to listen to this right here.
The elephant in the room, she's still a brown lady that's got to try to win in a party that is deeply anti-immigrant. It's still a challenge. I don't see how she becomes the nominee of that party with Donald Trump still around. I can't picture it happening. Maybe it could happen. Ron DeSantis' only argument for staying in it is he's the white guy, that he can still make the appeal to white people.
All right, I'm going to stop it right there. Just for a minute, and I'm going to go back to that. I'm going to go back to that clip because because her response to that was very interesting. One Joy Reid, thank you, as something was being handed to me by my sister. One Joy Reid, being the blondie that she is, uh, actually, she made a some would say a pretty fair assessment of the Republican Party, who appears to be anti-immigrant or anti-brown person, because they're always talking about the southern border. Uh, um, Anti-immigration, right? We want to keep those brown people off their own land, right? We want to keep brown people away from their own land that belonged to them once upon a time. For those of you that have seen the movie Killers of the Flower Moon, you know what I'm talking about, which was a great movie, by the way, which was spearheaded. It was based on the book. And also there's a documentary that specifically goes into much more detail about what happened to the Osage community, or to the Osage Nation of Native Americans that were here, and how they were infiltrated by Caucasian people to take over not only their land, but their commodity that was founded by them, oil. So anti-immigration, yeah, that might be a fair assessment. But Nikki Haley doesn't want to really discuss those matters, being in the Republican Party, which seems to always say we have to go after the border, build the wall, only at the southern border, nothing at the northern border. When we know that the person that made an attempt to, he viciously attacked the former Speaker of the House, or former Speaker of the House's husband, Nancy Pelosi's husband. The perpetrator was a Canadian immigrant. I mean, we know all this now. This should be common knowledge. But the Republican Party is typically anti-immigrant against brown people, people that are from countries south of America, Mexico, and all other countries of Central America. They don't want them here. But Nikki Haley, her response to what Joy Reid had to say, her response to what Joy Reid had to say was this.
Why we can do this, and we will get it done.
Are you a racist party? Are you involved in a racist party?
No. We're not a racist country, Brian. We've never been a racist country. Our goal is to make sure that today is better than yesterday. Are we perfect? No. But our goal is to always make sure we try and be more perfect every day that we can. I know I faced racism when I was growing up, but I can tell you today is a lot better than it was then.
Okay, let me come out of there. Just again, now, if you truly heard that, you heard her say that America is not a racist country, which she's not the only Republican, and she's not the only one in both parties that have said this. Because Miss or Madam Vice President Kamala Harris has also said the same thing. And her parents, her mother, came from India. She's also said that America is not a racist country. But if you heard this clip right here, you also heard that Nikki Haley just about 2 sentences later said that she experienced racism growing up here in America, in South Carolina, right? One of the first colonies or colony states. She experienced racism, but America is not a racist country. Well, being that Black History Month is fast approaching, as great as America is as a country, we should know by now, as there are those in our political realm that are doing the best that they can to once again rewrite history. And they don't want you to know about the racism of America and how this land, as we know it today, was founded on racism. I mean, the people that we call our forefathers, we know that they were racist slave owners. Or as Ice-T used to say, they were racist madmen, right? But America's not a racist country. If America's not a racist country, back in 1960, when the late great Muhammad Ali won his gold medal in boxing, came back to the States to celebrate in his hometown of Louisville, Kentucky, he couldn't even get served in his own hometown. He couldn't get served in a restaurant where there were predominantly Caucasian people, and they refused to serve him as a gold medal winner representing the United States of America. But America's not a racist country. If America's not a racist country, there would be no such purpose for a civil rights movement. The civil rights movement that was spearheaded by the late Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., who we just celebrated his birthday, that which is now a 3-day weekend, of which a couple of states protested for it to not be a federal holiday. Arizona probably being the most famous of those states, not wanting King Day to be a federal holiday that everyone can recognize for his contributions of doing the best that he could to change certain public policies when it comes to men and women that looked like him, like myself. But America is not a racist country. This is what political figures love to spew out as a talking point. And again, the vice president has said this on numerous occasions. America is not a racist country. We just saw Nimrata say that America is not a racist country. But at the same time, she experienced racism growing up. But I guess in politics, you can have it both ways. America's a great country, but it does have its flaws. And one of its biggest flaws and one of its biggest cancers is the cancer of racism. Those being socially and economically neglected because of their, quote, race or their cultural background, which is a better term for me, their cultural background. Because it does appear that we're anti-immigrant. Look at how America wants us to view Palestinians. They want us to view them as our enemy. Saudi Arabians, they want them to be our enemy, or they want me to feel that they are my enemy. One of my clients was Saudi Arabian a few years back. Um, a couple of my clients, one of my clients right now is Indian. She grew up in Canada, but her parents are from India. I had a client a couple of years back during the pandemic, Indian. But they're supposed to be our enemies. I mean, India itself has been looked at as a racist country, being in the fact that once upon a time, I don't know if it still occurs now, but once upon a time, even the country of India had its own, I guess, civil war like challenges, because those in North India were of lighter or fair skin, and those of Southern India were those of darker complexion. And those of the North thought they were better than those of the South because of that, believing that those of darker complexion were inferior. This is in India. But Nimrata says America is not a racist country. Kamala Harris, or as Republicans would say, Kamala. You know, they love calling her Kamala, as opposed to Madam Vice President. They don't want to give her any respect in that nature. But both of them say that America is not a racist country. If America is not a racist country, why are we so hell bent on? Why are Republicans so hell bent on building this wall across the entire border to keep brown people off their own land? And we see that most people in the Republican Party are Caucasian. It's just what it is. Unless your name is Tim Scott, then you'll be like the only chocolate chip in the cookie dough, right? Tim Scott, endorsing the Donald, who's been going on a few tirades over the last couple of days, because we all know that he's in court for the second time for a defamation case against one Elizabeth Jean Carroll. Defamation, you know, they call her E. Jean Carroll. She's the one that's accused the Donald of physically and sexually assaulting her back in the 90s. And he was found liable, which is almost an equivalent of guilt. But he claims he doesn't even know the woman, never seen her in his life. But that's her in that picture, that famous picture that we saw. I wish I had it too. I can pull that up. Where he thought he was standing next to his wife, Marla Maples, and it wasn't even her. It was Elizabeth Jean Carroll. Ah, good old Donald. You know, the one that he thinks all of this is a disgrace. It's a disgrace. It's a disgrace. This is why America's going to hell. America's going to hell. All of this should be thrown out. Because he is the victim in all of this. He's the victim. Or he likes to play victim. I think that Donald is intelligent enough to know that when you, as he probably knows a little bit about psychology and how psychology works when it comes to the general public. You know, if you tell the lie, or if you give people very specific talking points to draw them in magnetically, you know, you keep saying the same talking points over and over and over and over and over and over and over again, nature takes over, and you can have a MAGA audience held spellbound in suspense, you know, in mesmerization. That's what the Donald has done with his core audience. You know, he's held them in suspension, right, with his talking points. Because if you notice, he says the same talking points over and over and over and over and over again. It's a disgrace. This is a disgrace. It's horrible. This is horrible. America's going to hell. This is why America's going to hell. Those are his favorite lines. It's a disgrace. America's going to hell. He's the victim. I don't know this woman. Never seen her a day in my life. These lawyers, these attorneys, they were never my attorneys. I don't know who they are. The Donald. The one whose main lawyer looks like Melania Trump Jr. His lawyer, you know, the one that's always having an attitude when she speaks. She speaks like the Donald. You know, she's like Melania's twin sister. So we'll see how all that pans out in this political season that is heating up more and more and more and more. Even Matt Gaetz, you know, the Republican House representative from Florida, even today, you know, he said, hey, we're going to get our votes no matter what. You know, if the Caucasian woman, he called them Karens, if the Karens choose not to vote, we have the Julios and the Jamals. They'll vote. That's what he said out of his mouth. On Newsmax. Matt Gaetz. You know, the one that looks like, you know, he has his eyebrows like this all the time. Matt Gaetz. He said, if the Karens don't want to vote for us, hey, we got the Jamals and the Julios. Meaning black and brown people, black and brown men. If the Caucasian women won't vote, we got the black and brown men. They'll vote for us. That's what he thinks of black and brown men. That's what he thinks of them. We're Jamals. That's what my name is, Jamal. Black men. Typical black name, Jamal. Typical Latin brown name, Julio. Right? You know, the stereotypical, some would say racist. That's what Matt Gaetz said. But America's not a racist country. I don't know if Matt Gaetz is racist or not, but the words have weight. The words have weight. Because these are political figures, and no one seems to want to hold these figures accountable. I mean, Donald doesn't even want to hold himself accountable for what he's in court in for right now. For defamation, twice. Because he likes to talk. He loves to talk. You know, this is the same man that on tape said, you can just grab her in the pussy. That Donald. And people still want him to be president, not wanting to hold them accountable. So we'll see how all that pans out. You know, Donald hasn't debated anyone yet. We'll see if he'll finally have a debate with someone, or if he'll just kind of wait it out and see if he'll be debating sloppy Joe Biden. We'll see. I think he's waiting for that to happen. But I'll give it to Donald. You know, he's a character. I've always said he's a character. He's funny to watch. He's like a comedian, always doing stand-ups at the podium, stand-up comedy. He's a character. Actually, he's a caricature. So there's only 3 people left in this Republican race. You know, you have Nimrata Haley, and then you have the governor of Florida, Ron desanctimonious, as the Donald would call him. The bobblehead. He's always bobbling his head when he talks. So it remains to be seen how that all pans out with these three people. People are talking about the Iowa caucus and how it was a landslide, but most people didn't come out in those snowstorms. It's been storming pretty viciously in the Midwest and on the East Coast. So a lot of people are choosing not to come out to participate in these caucuses. I think the next is New Hampshire. So we'll see how that turns out. Just because Donald won in that state, it doesn't necessarily put a stamp of approval that he'll be nominated as the front runner for the Republican Party. It's not official yet. We don't know. More than likely he will be, but we still don't know. Things could change. I mean, we saw how things changed in the Democratic Party when Joe Biden was running for president almost 4 years ago now against Bernie Sanders. He was in pretty much last place, and Bernie was in front until this what's his name? Representative. He was the majority whip. Clyburn, that's his name. Black man looking like Uncle Ben. Clyburn. Once he endorsed Joe Biden, Bernie Sanders went from here and Joe Biden here, and then all of a sudden the next day it flip-flopped. And then you had Joe Biden being the front runner all of a sudden, when nobody gave a crap about Joe Biden at that time, because we wanted someone new in the White House. Bernie was that one at one point, but as politics is, the dirty profession that it is, we see how that turned out. Because now sloppy Joe Biden, or sleepy Joe Biden, is now president, and Kamala Harris is the vice president, the one that said America is not a racist country. The one that went to an HBCU, Howard University. So we'll see how that all pans out in the months and weeks to come. I mean, November is 10 more months away. So 10 and a half months away. So we'll see how that pans out. Gotta love America.